We're back in the hammock lab, and today we're talking about the Hennessy hammock. Now, the Hennessy was my very first hammock. This is it right here, the Expedition. They're designed as an all-in-one kit, so not only do you get the hammock body, but you also get an integrated bug net, the suspension system so you can hang up the hammock, also some webbing straps so you can create an anchor point, and also the Hennessys come with an integrated tarp. So they're designed for camping. Everything about them is basically a ready-to-go kit you can take out without having to buy anything extra. Now, you can buy the Hennessy without the tarp, for example, if you already have it, and you can also buy the tarp separately. So some of those things are also very modular. Today I've got a deep jungle and also the new Hyperlight, and these are both the side zipper entry hammocks. Now, one of the things that's also unique about the Hennessy is they were originally designed so that the tarp and the hammock were a matched set, and that tarp was designed to attach to the suspension lines of the hammock. Now, that has some advantages because the Hennessy can be set up as a single unit where once you set up the hammock, the tarp is set up as well because the tarp is clipped to the hammock suspension. And if you have seen any of the hammock photos, they look amazing, where you see this very sleek design and the tarp and the hammock are a matched pair. Now, one of the drawbacks of that particular design is some folks have noticed when they've set up according to how they've been told to pitch the Hennessy, which is very tight against the suspension points, once they load the hammock, that tarp tends to sag and drop just a little bit and gets really floppy, which is not really good when you're trying to stay dry and warm in that hammock. So today I'm going to show you how to set up a stock brand new hammock from Hennessy with the tarp connected to the suspension of the hammock and eliminate that floppy tarp. It's really easy to do, but we're going to use a stock system to do that. Alright, I'm out here in the garage with the Hennessy Deep Jungle Hammock, and today I'm going to show you how to set up a Hennessy for a pitch-perfect tarp every time. My anchor points are just shy of 18 feet apart and set at 5 feet high. And the reason for that is that the Hennessy is often shown to be pitched really kind of tight between those anchor points, as you kind of see here. And right above the Hennessy, you might be able to see it on the video, I've got this orange line that shows kind of a true horizontal line here. And I'll show you why I'm going to use that in a little bit. I've also got my a bag here that's weighted with about 40 pounds of gear, which is just enough to show you how things will change once I put weight in the hammock. Now, setting up the Hennessy, like I said, is pretty straightforward. We're gonna use the snakeskin stuff sacks, which are tapered tubular sacks, and it makes setup pretty quick and easy. There's the deep jungle with the included bug net. It's got nice sharp lines. Everything's nice and tight. Now, I've marked the center point on the hammock right here on this orange line. And the tarp, we're about 3 inches from horizontal down from the tarp. Now watch what happens when I put weight inside the hammock. Alright, now with that 40-pound bag inside the hammock, we've gone from 3 inches down to 4.5 inches. So we've dropped about 1.5 inches from center. Now, what difference does 1.5 inches make? Well, now what's happened with the tarp is it's saggy. It's dropped down, and I'm going to bring the video camera over here and show you how the sides of the tarp have also swooped in. See how here on the left side the tarp is actually touching the hammock now, and the right side is scooping in a little bit. You can see especially there near the top, and it's really saggy. Oh, right there in the middle. there's a couple of things happening that are making this tarp sag now. I've got weight applied in the hammock, and I want to show you, originally the hammock was pitched as tight as possible between the two anchor points, but it still had a slight angle like this ruler is illustrating. Once weight applied, it moved that suspension down a couple of inches. Now what changed here is some basic trigonometry. The hypotenuse of this triangle from horizontal down to, or from where it was down to where it currently is, has changed. And that hypotenuse now has changed its length, which also changes basically the length of where that tarp is pitched on that hypotenuse. It shortens the distance, making that tarp sag down. So how do you fix that? Well, one solution is if you had a partner who could, like what I'm doing right now, I could now take this tarp and pull it a couple of inches, and all of a sudden the tarp pops back up. And all the difference was just like a half an inch or an inch of change. Now, that's not a great solution if you're hiking alone, and it's really not a great solution because once you get out of the hammock, once that hammock pops back up, that distance shortens again, and it puts extra strain on that tarp. Now these tarps, they do have a little bit of stretch in them. They're nylon based. There's a little bit of stretch in the Spectra, not much. There's also a little bit of stretch in the suspension straps. So when you add all of those up, you can get that little bit of variance. I'm going to put this back to where it was before, about an inch or so, because I'm going to show you a better way to hang the Hennessy hammock so you don't ever have to just fiddle with this particular hang point. It'll work every time. Alright, to fix the Hennessy hammock so you get a perfect pitch on that tarp every time, the trick is to get a 30-degree hang angle off of the anchor points. And the way to do that if you're out in the field is simply do this. Point your finger and your thumb straight up like you're shooting a gun, and that angle between the tip of your thumb and your pointer finger is roughly 30 degrees. And we're going to use that as our estimator to rehang this hammock. Now, to do that, the simple solution here is all we have to do is raise the anchor point up. As I mentioned at the beginning of this video, right now my anchor point is at 5 feet. Now, using my hammock hang calculator, I estimated the hang point based on the distance between the anchors, which is roughly 18 feet. So that gives me a hang point of about 6 feet, just a little bit over 6 feet. So I'm going to raise my anchor points up about a foot, and that's going to make all the difference in pitching this hammock. The only thing that I've done right now is I've changed the anchor point. You can see it's about a foot higher now on both sides, and that gives me a nice 30-degree angle. But if you look at the hammock now, that tarp looks pathetically droopy. In fact, this is really what it looks like once you get in a hammock, a Hennessy hammock, with full weight, because it's going to drop quite a bit further, and the tarp is going to sag more dramatically. Now, what we're going to do is, with it pitched this way, I can now set up the tarp. I'm going to move the tarp tie-out point a little higher on both sides so that it is taut across this 30-degree angle. Alright, now I have my tarp set up. You can see now that the tarp is kind of acting like the Hennessy ridgeline, where it pulls in the two sides of that suspension just a little bit. Now let's set up the guy lines. Alright, I want to point out a couple of things. Now that we have the hammock on a 30-degree angle, the tarp can now be pitched quite a bit further up. Now that creates a little bit more distance between the top of the hammock and the bottom of the tarp, so it's a little easier to get in and out of the hammock. It's not so tight and close up in there. And the horizontal line here, you can see that has not changed. In fact, this tarp is now pitched where it was before the first time when this hammock was pulled up, you know, nice and tight straight across. You can see the difference. That that length of that suspension changes. If I pull that hammock tight, now we probably have to cut that in half because half would be on the other side of the hammock. But that's how much difference of suspension line we have saved or added by just changing that 30 degrees angle. And that changes how much that tarp is going to sag. Now, let's go put weight inside the hammock and see what happens and if this tarp is going to droop again. Is that awesome? So, my weight isn't exactly centered, but we've dropped just a little bit on the tarp, but everything is still taut. It's a miracle! It's amazing. Let's see if I can center that weight a little bit. Alright, that's a little better. So we've now gone to 1.5 inches, so it's still dropped a little bit. Interestingly enough, the tarp is still taut. I haven't added any shock cord to the corners of the guy line. I haven't moved anything. All I've done is change the suspension angle from like 6 degrees to 30 degrees and moved the tarp up a little bit. All right, let's get a closer look here. Again, we've got the 30 degrees off. And that tarp is still tight. Very taut. No sagginess. And the ridge line is a little tight still. A little tighter. But everything is now perfect. This is the way to set up a Hennessy hammock. Alright, this is the trick to setting up a Hennessy hammock so that this tarp can be pitched to the suspension lines and not sag once weight is applied. Again, go for 30 degrees off of the suspension from the anchor point. Now, the general rule of thumb is the further apart your anchor points, the higher up you need to position your anchors. So again, in this case, 18 feet, we've got a suspension point that's just above 6 feet off of the ground.